Do you have continuity or association plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on Corporate Governance Platform, proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals, and coming to you live from MITV in Lagos. I am Tunde Odeyemi. In a couple of minutes, we'll be looking at the role of company secretaries as a sounding board on corporate governance. And I have with me here in the studio our very respected guest, Mrs. TEMITOPE HASSAN. She's a distinguished fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. Mrs. TEMITOPE HASSAN is a multidisciplinary lawyer with over 26 years work experience. She holds a bachelor's degree in law from the London South Bank University, United Kingdom, a Bachelor of Science degree in insurance from the University of Lagos, and a master's degree in business administration from the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. She is currently the company secretary and legal advisor of Dangote Sugar Refinery PLC, and she has developed valuable cognitive skills and expertise in company secretarial practice, legal drafting, dispute resolution, corporate governance advisory, investors relations, regulatory compliance, and general management. Mrs. TEMITOPE HASSAN is a certified trainer and an accredited mentor of the National Mentoring Pilot Project, United Kingdom. She is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. Mrs. HASSAN, it's a delight to have you on Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for finding time to join us on today's program.
Thank you.
It's a program before the Christmas. I think it's proper to say Merry Christmas to you in advance.
Thank you very much, and the best to you as well.
Okay, we'll be discussing the role of company secretary as a sounding board on corporate governance. What really does a company secretary usually do in an organization?
Okay, so I'll describe a company secretary as what you would call a polymath. And that's someone who has wide learning about various subjects. So the company secretary is sometimes erroneously thought of as a clerical person.
Okay.
This is not correct. A company secretary is a strategic governance professional and a board advisor. So the company secretary has different roles. You have a role to the board as the board advisor. You have a role to the company as the company secretary. You also have a role to shareholders. You need to give them timely information, so you have a role to them. And you have a role to all other stakeholders. So as such, you could describe a company secretary as a watchdog in charge of implementing decisions, in charge of ensuring compliance with the legal and regulatory framework. You could also describe him or her as a scribe, or as a liaison officer, because you need to liaise between the board and management and other stakeholders. So there, in very many ways, you have your different roles. And when you talk about the day-to-day role of the company secretary, Section 335 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 summarizes the role. But you know, the Act is referring to all industries. So as a company secretary in a particular industry, you would have more duties to do. You would know your job, you would know the industry in which you belong. So the Act just stipulates attending meetings of the company, taking minutes of meeting, filing all the regulatory returns, etc. But it's much more encompassing. And when you look at Principle 8 of the Nigerian Corporate Code of Corporate Governance 2018. It gives you the details of additional roles and responsibilities of a company secretary. And then I should also add that in carrying out the role of the company secretary, the company secretary requires to have some certain skills, and such as communication skills. You need to know how to communicate with the different categories of people. You also should have very good interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence. You should be mature, person of integrity, someone who's can manage confidentiality, because you will see things there that you shouldn't publish, and several other things. So some of this will help you in your role as a company secretary.
That is fantastic. Comprehensive answer to that question. This is where I want to invite the viewers to be part of the program. You can ask questions or make comments on today's program by sending your question or comments to as a text message to 080-2323-1287. I'll take the phone number again, 080-2323-1287. Send your text message to 080-2323-1287. Please, and when you send your message, kindly put your name so that we can well acknowledge it from here. You have given us a comprehensive role of a company secretary. You also mentioned KAMA, and you said that the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 also have detailed roles of the company secretary. Can you highlight some of the detailed roles stipulated in the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance? Okay,
thank you. So, Principle 8 of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 stipulates the role of the company secretary. So it actually states that the company secretary is important to have effective management and operations of the company. And the company secretary should be someone who has the gravitas and the objectivity with which to advise the board on governance issues. So when you, it goes on to talk about the governance issues you'll be advising the board on. And you'll be advising on disclosure of the disclosure requirements of the director. You'll be advising on the duties and responsibilities of the director. It talks about training. The company secretary is required to pre-plan the training and continuous education for directors. The company secretary is also required to prepare induction for new directors, board annual board evaluation, whether internal or external, to be coordinated by the company secretary. The company secretary should also notify board members of meetings of the board and the board committees, prepare and collate the papers in consonance with the management, and circularize to the board members on time. So the board packs also need to be timely and relevant. So the company secretary, also needs to look at the information going to the board and see that it is useful and relevant information to the board. The company secretary should disclose material information at the proper time. Some of the things that the code also expects the company secretary to do is also to advise on governance issues such as confidentiality, such as insider trading, ethics, governance issues, etc.
Wonderful. So the role of company secretary is not actually being a scribe or the misconception of people that is a clerical role. Now, references are being made to the role of company secretary in financial and administrative capacities. I want you to explain to us what does this, functional rather, not financial, functional and administrative capacities. Yeah. I want you to explain to us this functional and administrative role of secretary.
Okay, so Principle 8 of the code actually talks about having a functional and an administrative role. So functionally, the company secretary should report to the board through the chairman, while administratively, it will report to the CEO on the day-to-day operations of the company. Now, to be quite frank, this distinction can be blurry, and it's easier in theory than in practice. Because sometimes, for instance, I would advise my board on governance issues relating to a decision to be made or a decision that has been made. and so I'm reporting functionally to the chairman.
Okay.
But I would also be, be advising on governance issues to my management when it's a management issue. So I'm still doing the same thing, but I'm doing it through the MD, which is the administrative leg, and also through the board chairman, which is functional. So in actual sense, it's actually quite difficult to wear the two caps. Sometimes a company secretary might find his or herself in an awkward position trying to balance the two. Because sometimes, if for instance you have, different conflicting ideas or conflicting suggestions, so it's left to a mature company secretary to be able to manage the dual reporting lines without creating some form of discomfort or awkward position.
The company secretary needs to be matured.
Yes.
Because you are striking the balance between two sides. Okay, we have a question here. Not even a question, about 3 questions from Joel Osuma. Joel Osuma, I'll take the 3 questions one after the other.
Okay.
The first question is, as a company secretary, are they more powerful than any other staff? You have said a lot about companies. Are they more powerful than any other staff? That is the first question Joel is asking. The second question is that, are they being appointed or nominated? And the third question is that, are female more preferred to male?
Okay. So
you are a company secretary,
yes,
and you are a female. So he's asking, are female more preferred to a male? So you know the 3 questions, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll take them serious.
Okay.
So the first question is about the company secretary being more powerful. Okay,
yes.
So what I'll say to that quite easily, Principle 8 again of the code talks about the board empowering a company secretary. So that means the board, to perform my function and my duties as a company secretary, the board needs to empower me, and that means the board needs to give me the requisite authority and power to perform. If you have a dog, for instance, and you want your dog to bark at strangers and all that, if you remove the teeth, the dog will not be able to bark or frighten anyone. So I need to have my teeth. So if you want a bird to fly, you can't defeather it. So the court recognizes this and says that I need to be empowered. So I'm not going to say more powerful than this or that, but what I'll just say is that the company secretary has his or her role to play and must be so empowered.
Okay, yeah. Not really powerful, but
empowered adequately, yes.
Okay, the second question, are they being nominated or appointed? Okay,
so you see, the code recognizes the importance of this strategic governance officer called the company secretary. And the appointment process of a company secretary should be rigorous, as rigorous as the selection process of directors. The person must have the gravitas and the objectivity to be able to advise the board. You can't have a timid person advising the board. So it has to be someone who has the requisite skills, knowledge, training, and experience. So it is, and also the removal of the company secretary has to be in line with extant laws. Okay. So the company secretary is not required like directors to be brought before the AGM for approval and all that, no. But the board appoints the company secretary.
The board appoints the company secretary. Yes. And the third questions, are female more preferred to male?
Well, the code talks about gender balance on the board. So strictly speaking, the company secretary is not a member of the board, but is an officer of the board. So it really doesn't matter whether male or female. I think what the extant laws and the code says is to have the requisite skills, knowledge, and training. So whether male or female, it doesn't matter. So as long as you have the skills, and in addition to that, like the soft skills I spoke about, maturity, confidentiality, integrity, dispute resolution skills, conflict management skills. So that is what qualifies you. So it's not the condition of being male or female that qualifies you.
So it's the skill that matters, not the gender.
Yes.
Okay. Why is it that company secretaries are often being referred to as the sounding board on corporate governance?
Okay. So I think I should start by defining or explaining what a sounding board is. So a sounding board is a person or a group of people that you can tell your suggestions to, with a view to the person advising you on on that suggestion, whether to validate it or to tell you about the likely success of such a suggestion. So for instance, my daughter could come to me, oh mom, I want to make some Christmas hampers for sale, and I'll advise her on what to do. So the same way, the board has suggestions, has decisions. The company secretary is the sounding board, because I need to be able to validate it. Is this going to bring about some legal risk, some governance risk? Is this in compliance with the extant laws and codes and regulations and all that? So the company secretary is indeed a sounding board. Is a sounding board on issues to the board, on their roles and responsibilities, their duties, on disclosure requirements, and on governance issues, the charter, codes, etc. While to management as well is also a standing board on day-to-day operational issues.
Okay, I have another question here from Bayo. Bayo says, good afternoon, ma. As a secretary of a company, can you allow my company to, can my company use, so what Bayo is saying is that, can you allow my company to use, who is not part of the company, to tender? I really, what Bayo is trying to bring up here is that, can somebody that is not part of the company be the company secretary? That is my interpretation of Bayo's question.
Well,
here.
okay, so let me redefine Bayo's question to make it easy for viewers to understand. So Bayo is asking that, can a non-employee be a company secretary of a company?
Of a company.
Yes, certainly. So if we go to section 332 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act, the law stipulates the categories of persons that can be company secretaries. So the first one there you have is a member of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, of which I am a fellow.
ICSAN, right?
Yes, ICSAN. So the second one there, which is the highest one there, it says. So the second one there is a legal practitioner. I'm also a legal practitioner. The third one is a chartered accountant, maybe a member of ICANN or any other accounting body so approved by the Act from time to time. The fourth category is someone who's been a company secretary of a company for 3 years, and of that 3 years, the preceding 5 years has been the company secretary of that company. While the fourth one, which is probably relevant to Bayo's question, is a firm. Okay. So you could have a firm of company secretaries that would be the company secretary of your firm. So, and is not an employee
of the company.
Yes. So an employee, if you're an employee company secretary, you're required to be a senior management staff so that you can have that gravitas and objectivities that I'm talking about. But for a firm, you just need to be a firm with reasonable experience and qualification and training that appears to in the mind of the directors. Okay,
there's yet another question from Mike from Owe, and you need to clarify this. Said, how important is, I know you have talked about the importance of company secretary, the role of company secretary, but he's asking how important is secretary in a company. He now mentioned here that because some are manipulative. I don't really understand that. Maybe you can clear the air here for Mike.
Can you read it out again?
He said, how important is secretary in a company? Because some are manipulative. I don't understand the word manipulative there. Okay. But I don't know whether you can clear some here there.
Okay, so it says how important is a company secretary? As I've said earlier, a company secretary is of utmost importance in a company because you need a secretary for your board and your company. So the company secretary, the functions of a company secretary, I'll just quickly recap again. The company secretary files all your returns. The company has to file certain returns to be a going concern. So the company secretary files your report, keeps your registers. I'm now talking about the day-to-day activities of company secretary. The company secretary advises on matters of legal, compliance, regulatory, etc. So without a company secretary's advice, your company may not be able to fulfill its goals and aspirations. So in order to hit your target as a company, you need someone to help you coordinate between board management and all stakeholders. So as for manipulative, well, again, I will say that the board empowers you. So perhaps it's that empowerment that Bayo is referring to. Mike is referring to
as manipulative.
Yes, so, but his question is not clear.
Okay, there is yet another question here. We would like to take as many questions that we can take within the time because of our viewers. Okay. Says, this is about 3 questions, but the third one is vital to me. I said, what is the criteria for one to be appointed as a secretary? You have actually mentioned that.
Yes.
And the second question is that, is it a must that they must be computer literate?
Oh, yes. What I'll say, who is the sender of this question?
This person is Joel.
Joel, okay.
Joel.
So Joel, what I'll say to you that in 2021, 2022 and beyond, IT skills is of utmost importance. You can hardly do anything without good IT skills. So yes, as a matter of fact, to prepare board packs, I remember the days, my earlier days as a company secretary, where we used a lot of paper. We would spend all night printing and board papers, and then sometimes there's a correction, you photocopy all night, you bind papers. No, we have software now like Board Effects, Board Vantage. So within 5 minutes, I can collate the board pack and circulate within a twinkle of a second by email. I don't have to have a driver dispatching all night long. No. So IT skills are important not only as a company secretary, it's really important for any professional in today's...
so for anybody to be relevant in today's
yes,
work...
you do need IT skills, certainly.
Okay. And the last question that he asked there is, can a company secretary also stand as a personal assistant to the director?
No, I think, who is this person?
It's still Joel.
Okay, so Joel, again, is confusing the role of a company secretary in the time of common law and more than a century ago to today's company secretary. Joel, for your information, some company secretaries are actually directors. So
they cannot be a personal assistant to directors? No,
certainly not. So what you have there is a PA you can have, a director can have his or her PA, but the company secretary is the secretary of the board and the secretary of the company, and not a personal assistant to any director.
Thank you very much. If you are just joining us, it's Corporate Governance Platform coming to you from MITV and proudly brought to you by ICSAN. And we are discussing the role of company secretary as a sounding board on corporate governance. The CAMA 2020 actually stipulated that some companies that are referred to as small companies are not obligated to have company secretaries. Now, what are the benefits if such companies that are categorized as small companies, if they decide to continue to have company secretaries? What are the benefits that are accruable to them?
Okay, first of all, to put it in perspective, I would like to let the viewers know that that's new law, so to say, to allow private companies, not to have company secretaries, is one of the ways to ease, for ease of business.
Okay.
So that small companies that do not have the financial wherewithal and can start without a company secretary. But I believe that any forward-looking small company that has growth in its in sight would definitely have its own company secretary, a professional company secretary. And the benefits of a company secretary, I mean, we've said this, again and again, it cannot be quantified, because the company secretary will help you to avoid penalties and fines, regulatory issues. It would help you to have a good reputation. It will help you to meet the goals and aspirations of the company. So having a company secretary, even if it's a small company, it will be of great benefit.
Okay. Do you think company secretary can act as whistleblower? And if they can act as whistleblower, under what circumstance?
Okay, a whistleblower is someone who notices or perceives that there's a misconduct happening, or an illegality, or an unethical action, or even a hazardous activity that is going on, and will now blow a whistle. So there are channels for whistleblowing. Sometimes you have internal channels and you have external channels. So any stakeholder can blow a whistle, and a stakeholder is any member of the company. So a company secretary is a stakeholder and can blow a whistle. But however, I want to put a note there. So as a company secretary, if I observe a misconduct, for instance, maybe there's some insider trading by a director. So if I observe that, I shouldn't, first of all, go to whistleblow. So I should bring this to the knowledge of the chairman of the board or the appropriate board committee, such as the governance committee. So there are lines where I can bring this forward before it becomes an illegality. So there are ways that, so I would expect that a responsible company secretary would explore internal lines of notification before this becomes a big issue that will have public consequences and penalties, etc.
Okay. Will you suggest that Nigeria emulate some other countries, such as India, where you can only practice as a company secretary if you are a chartered secretary?
Okay, so who are chartered secretaries? Chartered secretaries are governance professionals that have training in the area of law, finance, accounting, maybe taxation, risk management, corporate governance, etc. So there are people that have taken qualifying exams and they are qualified to act as, to be chartered secretaries. So in India, it's fine, it's good. In Nigeria, I think this is forward-looking. However, this is not something that can happen overnight. This is the extant laws right now, like I quoted, Section 332 of the Companies and Allied Matters Act, allows various other professionals like accountants and lawyers to be company secretaries of public companies. So this is not something that can happen overnight. It will have to have an amendment of the extant laws. So we also need to, it's good to see something good and copy something good. However, you need to also be able to put it in perspective of your own local circumstances. So I think it's a good thing that can be done, but it's something that has to have a lot more thought to it.
Thank you very much, Mrs. TEMITOPE HASSAN. This is where we'll wrap it up on today's edition of Corporate Governance Platform. Thanks for coming on the show, Mrs. TEMITOPE HASSAN, a distinguished fellow of ICSAN and a company secretary of Dangote Sugar Refinery. We are so happy to have you on the show, and want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on the role of company secretary. We cannot take other text message. I can see one other text message that came in because of our time. We cannot take another text message. We want to thank those. Okay, let me go. This is from Mr. Bayo as well. Bayo, what I'm saying, I was called to tender is for a contract. It's for a contract, and my company do have what it takes to tender for the work. Can you use another company that have the valuable documents for the work? What can I do to pay back? I think Bayo was talking about being a tender here. I think he's talking about going for a tender, not really the role of company secretary that we are talking about. I think Bayo listened to your answer and he decided to send a message. Say, what I'm saying, I was called to tender is for a contact for my company to tender for a work. Can another company use valuable documents for work I think it's not very clear with the question here, and I think we have to wrap it up. Thank you very much for being part of the show. This is where I draw the curtains. My name remains Tunde Odeyemi. Keep spreading the gospel of corporate governance. I wish you Merry Christmas in advance. Bye for now.
Thank you.